Hello and welcome to the 113th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark. I'm the Green Tank. I'll be hosting this episode. With me are my co-hosts Neelan, the Orange Tank.
Hello.
And Kellen, the Red Tank.
Hello.
And if the listener reviews from last week's episode are anything to go off of, the favorite tank of the podcast is also with us here, the Blue Tank, Christina.
Hello. I think, though, to correct that, I'm only the favorite in replacing Kellen.
Right.
I don't think I'm the favorite. You know what I mean?
That's a low bar to achieve to hit favoritism, but
I was sort of thinking like that spice that only comes out, like once a month, and that like if you were here every week, that people wouldn't care for you. 'Cause that's sort of what my life is like all the time.
Yeah. So when people say like, "Oh, I love that person," but in small doses, that's basically what you're saying about your girlfriend.
We do live together. Uh-oh. We may have to pause to fix the smile that I'm being given right now.
what is the term that you like to use about when we hate each other in after self-care or aftercare?
Aftercare. The hugs in the
This
aftercare.
episode may require some aftercare. This episode is going to be the first in our new series of Love and Hate, where we go over different mechanisms in the board gaming world and talk about things we love and things we hate about them.
And who we love and who we hate.
You want to vote on that now? In this episode, we're going to be talking about area control games. So that'll be coming up a little bit later. But in the meantime, let's talk about the games that we've been playing. Christina.
Oh, I'm going first?
I think so.
Oh, boy. So The Crew is a co-op trick-taking game, which might sound like it doesn't work, but it does, surprisingly. It was awesome. Oh, wait, we're not supposed to talk about our opinions yet. Never mind. Okay, The Crew.
Tell them what it is first, Christina.
All right. The Crew is a co-op trick-taking game. It's a campaign game. So there are 50 different missions where each mission you are trying to accomplish a different set of trick-taking rules. So we sampled some of the first 15 missions, and in most of those earlier ones, the missions were all about certain people winning a certain trick before another player won a different trick.
So everyone has cards placed in front of them that say this player must win the 2 yellow card in order for you to win the mission. And then sometimes they even have sequential ordering. So Christina must win the trick with the 7 in pink, and then Mark must win something, and then Neelan must win something specific, which sounds kind of easy when you have a handful of cards, except the whole game revolves around not being able to communicate with each other while trying to trick take.
Right. So a la Hanabi.
Oh, she's using my phraseology. Where are you getting this phraseology?
Yeah, Allah is not your phrase.
That's
That's
not
my
your-
phrase. I came up with that phrase.
Just like you do you. All
like
from Callan Allen Originals. So in the same way, you're not able to communicate with the other players. You have to look at your hand and figure out a way to make sure that Neelan wins the trick with the pink 1, but you have the pink 1 in your hand. How are you going to make that happen without talking about it? And that has to happen before you win. The one way that you can communicate, every single player has one opportunity per round to play a card and communicate if that card is the only card of that color, if it's the highest card that they have in their hand of that color, or if it's the lowest card that they have in their hand of that color, which makes for some really excruciating decisions when you need to figure out the perfect communication, because it's literally your only chance.
Right, like there are times where you want to communicate that you have a card, say you have like the green 4, but the green 4 is neither your highest card, nor your lowest card, nor your only green card, and so there's no way for you to communicate that you have this card. So people may be wondering, where's the green 4? Like if you have the green 4, you want somebody to sort of signal it, but you are unable to, so there's like a restricted communication.
Right. And you also have to figure out if you have information regarding 2 of the different success metrics for the mission. You have to decide which you're going to communicate about, which can also be pretty challenging, but it ends up working out because people just start communicating and then you realize, okay, well, they communicated that, so then I can talk about this other task. What did you guys think?
I liked it a lot. It was really, really hard to get a hold of at Dice Tower West. I don't know if it's been released in the US, so we were left to trying to find a copy in the library. And through the entire con, it was checked out. We were lucky enough to get it. The last day of the con, I mean, the cards were worn out. The copy is quite beat up, so it had been played quite a few times. I don't have a sense of how hot or popular this game is exactly. I know that people are talking about it. I don't think it's going to revolutionize the world of gaming, like a la Codenames or whatever, but I do think there's a lot of crossover appeal. It does feel like a game that has a campaign aspect that I don't mind. I've cooled a great deal on campaign and legacy games over the last couple of years, but these tricks are so quick that I wouldn't mind bringing it to a game night and say, hey, let's try doing the next couple, or, and you don't have to play these in sequence at all. You can jump around, do whatever you want.
And I think that's crucial for it working as a campaign game at all, is it, like you said, you could just do it piecemeal. I think there is an appeal in starting at mission 1 and progressing to mission 50, but that might not be for you, so just jump around the mission book. Find a mission that seems cool.
There's no real sense that you need to play them in order, and also, this is like a perfect warm-up before game night. Let's try to get through the next mission, pick up the game, play it, and there's no, obligation that pulls me away from legacy.
Although they did feel very addicting. Like, once we played one, I was like, okay, what's the next? Let's go again. Let's go again. Which was nice because, there are so many. I do think there was a little bit of that momentum that you want.
It also felt to me, unlike most other games, like I was trying to learn a language. Like, a lot of games have this puzzle aspect, but I felt like, and this is almost solely because I'm not that adept at trick-taking games. I've definitely played them, but when it comes to trying to figure out a way to get a card to somebody else's hand, I feel like I was trying to learn the language of trick-taking games in a way. Like, if I knew better, there would be an obvious way to play this, or a way that I would be more helpful. So it felt like sort of like a puzzle on a puzzle, like the puzzle of the task plus the language of trick-taking. It felt sort of interesting in that way to me.
I think this ties into what is my main issue with the game, which is, as someone also that doesn't love trick-taking games in general, it has that element of feeling, the thing I said at the time is I admired it more than I liked it. I was enjoying the process of it, but I constantly was in fear that I would be the one that would mess up.
Right.
And it does feel, I know that we sort of joked about this a lot, but I felt this intense pressure not to be the one that messed up because I don't know trick-taking games well, or because I wasn't imparting the correct information. And it sort of sets you on a knife edge that I found uncomfortable more than I did fun.
It was really funny because Mark had to keep continually reassure, you guys, it's okay, we're a team, it's okay, just mess up, it's not a big deal. And one time, I think it might have even been intentional, Mark just played the complete wrong card and we were all like, why would you do that?
It was intentional.
Not intentional.
It was
not give him that.
It was 100%.
I mean, but he was but his reaction was like, so what, let's go again.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it was to teach us a lesson.
It was like Papa Mark teaching us lessons.
But you bring up a good point. Again, with this whole thing about no obligation of a legacy game, I played a completely idiotic move that cost us the game, and I was like, okay, well, that took 5 minutes. Let's just pick him up and try him again. I totally get the pressure thing because I definitely felt it when I'm trying to figure out what to play. And again, learning the language, trick-taking games, I felt like, there must be an obvious play here that I'm not seeing. But the game is so quick that in the end, that pressure didn't feel like that same, I'm letting everybody down thing. It's like, I've made a mistake. That was dumb. But we literally been playing this for 2 minutes.
Sure.
Who cares? Kellen, you have an alternative view of the game?
Let's hear it, Kellen Allen.
So it is interesting. I enjoyed the crew. I'm excited to play more of it. It is very hot and is likely going to be hot throughout the summer of people talking about this game because I think it was available in Europe and just now, I believe, getting into American distribution. It does lean on trick-taking heavily and all the conventions of what trick-taking does, but it can kind of smartly navigate you through different types of trick-taking games by giving you different missions, and so it's almost like multiple trick-taking games in one. I think you're comparing it to the granddaddy of this genre, or this micro-genre, so to speak, which is Hanabi. And I think I would prefer to play Hanabi, maybe, but the novelty of having so many different missions is fun. But Hanabi as a game is, I believe, a little bit more complicated or a little bit more complex, but obviously not than 50 different missions.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? So philosophically, I would prefer the Hanabi than the crew, which leans on the trick-taking nomenclature and making sure everyone understands it. But
that's the thing, turning a trick-taking game into a co-op is just such a fun idea. It's not just a normal co-op. It's the things you love about trick-taking, but now you're responsible for the whole team.
yeah, I also don't like co-op games, so there's that. And it leans into some of the partnership aspects of trick-taking games, because this isn't new. Limited communication, partnership, trick-taking game is
Bridge.
that is trick-taking.
Yeah.
And so this is that, but twisted even farther.
Right. And it's interesting. I obviously see the comparison between Hanabi and The Crew, but for me, they don't feel like occupying the same space. There's limited communication. They're both co-ops, but one is like trick taking and the other one is, I don't know what you would call it, I guess a shedding game. You're trying to shed cards in a certain way, but they just, for me, like, I don't feel like Hanabi or Crew replace one another. They feel like two different feelings to me.
And I think we'll have to play more, and I'd love to play
Sure.
more of The Crew to bear this out, but I think the distinct specific criticism, if we're getting tight, is that both Hanabi and The Crew are about how you communicate information to each other.
Right.
Because that's all you can do. But in The Crew, it feels like there is more just whizzle-wazzle luck to which order the cards come out in terms of what your mission objectives are in order that can make the mission extremely hard or extremely easy. And in The Crew, what you're doing is you're only allowed to give one piece of information each round. And Hanabi is just literally, what do people know? Like, it leans into the what do people know and what can I communicate to them, which is supposedly the crux of both of them in a way.
Sure. But you can be screwed sort of by the draw in Hanabi as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But would you say that the game of The Crew centers around when you share or what you share in terms of your information? Is that the game?
It doesn't feel like the center of the game to me. I could be proven wrong upon more plays, but for me, it felt like, to some extent, knowing how to play trick-taking games
Was more valuable.
was more valuable than the
when to
communication. The
communicate.
communication was part of it, but it felt like a small part of it. But who knows?
Yeah, no, I'm eager to play more, and obviously Hanabi is one of my favorite games ever, so, we're talking about it, so that means it's good.
So that was The Crew. What else have we been playing?
Nealon. What do you
Nope,
got?
that's not your
That's
job.
all your line.
That's his line. He's the host.
Oh.
You took over. Blue tank rolling in. Popcorn Nealon.
That's right.
Christina, thank you for asking. I've been playing, I want to very quickly talk about Tricarion, which is something I played at Dice Tower West with friend of the podcast, Nate, which I forgot to mention last weekend. We played this as a 2-player game, and as I think I've mentioned a couple of times, I've been itching to play this for a while. It is a Victorian magic-themed game.
Right up your alley.
As the
Wow,
Victorian
wow, wow.
magician. Yeah, exactly. This is a match made in heaven. So I have to try this. This is also by Mind Clash Games, whose game Anachrony I also really liked, so I was very intrigued by it. It represents so much about the theme. You're collecting components, researching new tricks, hiring assistants, planning your stage show. I don't want to go into too much detail because I think I want to play another proper game of this, possibly with the three of you, in order to get like a full assessment of it at that player account.
If you could only play it with two of us, who would you choose?
Christina and Mark, obviously.
What? What? Obviously, why? What does obviously mean in this context?
You've
It
always
was a
been like
painful decision.
You've just been a known hater of the magic community. I feel like you've always like looked
Right.
down on my
Let it-
magic.
True. I recently connected Nealon with a modern magician at Dice Tower Con West. I saw this one magician. I started talking to him and I was like, Nealon! I was really excited. I brought Nealon over and I was like, he's a magician. And Nealon was and Nealon nodded like, yeah. And I was like, Nealon, tell him you're a magician too. Nealon loved it.
It was
And
great.
then
The highlight of my trip.
he proceeded to show us a trick. And I think Nealon was less than impressed.
I was impressed.
Oh, you were impressed?
I definitely wasn't like, I didn't know how he did the trick.
Okay,
That's
well,
what-
there you go. I, for some reason, as he did the trick, I was like, Nealon saw right through that one.
Tricarion, though.
Oh, right.
The one thing I do want to say about this really quickly is that it, like Anachrony, it's the way that it blends its mechanics with theme that is so unlike other games of this weight. If you were to break down the systems, it would just be like any other sort of heavy Euro, but everything is tied into something thematically in a way that's really impressive. I'm excited to play this with you guys. But we've also been playing Stay Cool. This is by Scorpion Mask, which is the same company that brought us Decrypto, so we were excited to try out Stay Cool. The premise of the game is that one person is answering questions from two people simultaneously. So the person to their left and the person to their right are both asking questions, and they're sort of just repeating the questions in order to put pressure on the person that's supposed to be answering them. You have to answer the questions verbally to the person on your right and spell them out using dice to the person on your left. So you're constantly just getting bombarded by two questions at a time. You're trying to arrange dice while thinking about the other person's question. There's also a timed mechanic where you have 2 minutes in the first round, but in rounds 2 and 3, the way the timing mechanism evolves gets more and more excruciating. Right. So in round 2, you have to flip the timer yourself. So it's a 30-second timer, and you have to flip it every 30 seconds in order to give yourself 2 minutes. But if it ever runs out, your time's up. In round 3, you have to tell someone to flip the timer for you, but you don't get to see the timer. So you sort of have to try keep an internal clock while you're answering questions. It's agonizing. So, Christina, what did you think of Stay Cool?
I think we all kind of felt, well, most of us felt kind of similarly about this, which is it was really fun and stressful for the first few rounds. I was part of a 3-player game. I think everybody except for Neelan was part of a 3-player game, and it worked really well at 3. It was very hard, and it seems that you can't take it too seriously because certain cards have a series of questions that are just completely absurd and very easy. Like, what color is one of the players wearing? And you literally just look around and say red. And then there were some really, really challenging, like mind-bending ones that you're trying to think of while you're out. So it feels, if you really get hung up on winning, it feels super unfair because you might just get a really, really challenging card. And then Neelan gets a card that says, what is your middle name? So I think we had a lot of fun with it, but you definitely have to kind of stay very loosey-goosey, silly, make it fun. Mark was the best player I've ever seen at this game.
We're going to cut that and put it at the end of the episode as well.
Yeah, I was thinking
that's going to be the newest track.
I wish she'd ever say wow about anything I've ever done.
I gave you a compliment last week.
This game is so stressful and frustrating, and it's designed to frustrate you because they're reciting the questions and you're fumbling with the dice and trying to do like annoying math problems in your head. I think some of the questions are very clever and funny, and it plays on little tropes of trivia questions, which is like, which is heavier, a pound of this or a pound of that? And so they sort of try to get you. And it's funny because in your limited brain capacity, it's easier to get got than when you're operating, at peak capacity.
And if you get the answer wrong, they just calmly repeat the question, which feels so maddening. You just want to scream at them like, I heard you and I answered you. Move on.
But for me, at its best, in the best moments, you're in this state of kind of flow that feels similar to like Time's Up, except not nearly as fun. And at its worst, it's not fun at all. Like, not even a little bit. I don't like this. I can't play this. I won't play this. You just played it and I refuse to play it.
Yeah, we just played it without Kellen.
Yeah, I just played it for the first time.
Yeah, Mark, as the best player of this game.
Maybe ever.
Ever.
Yeah, ever.
I would say ever. What did you think?
I enjoyed it, although, I've only played it the one time, so there's a caveat there. And I think Neelan is going to talk more about this in a second, but it sells itself just by looking at the box. The box is big, colorful, and it's got a name like Stay Cool, and it promises a short play time. And the box lists 3 to 7 players, I think, is the play count.
He's smoking a cig on the front cover.
That's right. Can be cooler.
Wait, what? He's not.
No, I think he's
I was making a dumb joke.
He's a bomb. If he was smoking a cigarette,
Very bad.
Very dangerous.
It'd be a second fuse.
But speaking of art, honestly, like, I am in love with this box
Oh,
art.
really?
Like, my favorite of the
can
last
see that.
few years. I love the
Childish.
typography, the visual design, everything about it, the color palette.
It does kind of look like Board Game Barrage, actually, now that I look at it.
That is a bomb that one of our tanks shot
There you go.
to stay cool.
Yep. The bomb is sweating, so that also tells you a lot.
That you have to stay cool. So it sells itself as a party game in a lot of different ways, but even my limited play of it, my one play of it, it seems pretty clear to me that this is not the type of game that you want to play with even more than 4 people. Again, Neelan has played it at a larger count, so he can speak to that.
Yeah, so I've played this a few times at this point, and I will have to admit that in the last couple of games, I wasn't getting anything out of it. Like, I think it is a game with a good gimmick that gets past that gimmick very quickly. As to what you were saying about player count, I cannot stress this enough. Don't play this game with more than 4 people. Yeah. It feels optimal to me at 3, which is insane for a party game. But the first game I played of this was with 7 people, and there was so much dead time because only, I guess, 4 people, if you're playing with 4 or more, are active at the time. But that means that 3 people are inactive for what could be 5, 6, 7 minutes, which literally can't do anything. Like any trivia game, you're passively participating, but not in any way that actually feels substantive, and you're just waiting in order to do something. And when it does get around to you to do something, it's normally like a minor task, like monitoring the timer or asking questions. There's a lot of time that any given round goes in a game that big. I do think at 3 or 4 is the only player count that makes sense, but that just kind of feels so weird for a game that's this light and that bills itself as a party game. I just feel like there are any number of party games that would play more flexible player counts and just felt more rewarding from like a replay value perspective.
The thing about this is sort of, and this actually kind of reminds me of a game that we were playing on the drive back from Dice Tower West, which is Linky, which is a mass market sort of silly game, trivia game along the lines of like Trivial Pursuit, that kind of thing. It's the kind of game that I wouldn't want to play as like the meat of a game night at all, like never in a million years. But I can definitely see myself, in the case of Linky and in the case of Stay Cool, just absolutely binging on it for one night with like two other friends. Like I could just see us going in circles, playing it over and over and over and over again. So I don't know what niche that fits, but it feels like a guilty pleasure sort of game. Linky is a game that I'm not going to be extolling the virtues of.
Linky's our road trip. It's like our tradition to play Linky on every road trip, and we've almost gotten rid of it so many times, but it's become our road trip game.
Yeah.
We can't get rid of it now.
And I feel like the same, but Stay Cool. But the limiting factor with that is how few players.
Yeah, you couldn't play Stay Cool in the car.
That's true.
Linky is one of those games that I love. It's basically there are 4 trivia questions, and then the answer to those 4 trivia questions, there's a commonality between the 4 of them. So they could all be Tom Cruise movies, and one of the answers is Mission Impossible or the word impossible, and then one of the answers is Top Gun, and then so the first person to shout out the connecting point between all the trivia questions wins that card. So we played this for multiple hours on our road trip to and from Dice Tower West.
I was losing it because of how competitive Mark and Neelan got. Like, they were screaming obscenities when the other one guessed it first. And Kellen was driving, so he was playing too, and he would jump in and steal the win every now and then, unexpectedly. He was driving. He was.
I was a relative. I was in the running.
Yeah, you were.
At a certain point.
He got back into the running. Yeah. Anyways, I couldn't even read the questions because I was laughing so hard at how upset, and they weren't laughing at all. They were so upset every time. Like, Neelan would get something, and Mark would be like, Why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I? I know that's so like very, very fresh. It was hilarious. But
the couple times I do remember explicitly, like Mark giving me deference when I got some of them before him. He's like, "Oh, that was good, Kellen. Like, you did good." And it's like very unusual.
But
situation.
not if Neelan got it. If Neelan got it.
Yeah, maybe not with Neelan.
So that's Stay Cool.
And Linky.
All right. So, Kellen, what have you been playing?
So one of the games that I have talked about on the podcast many times in my most looking forward to list, I believe, of 2019 and I think also 2020 was Mezzo by John Cloudis. John Cloudis does a series of small box games with his company Small Box Games that I love. That's like Omen, A Reign of War, The North, Neolithic, Merchants of Merzanaz, which I'm sure that's pronounced right. Anyway, so Mezzo bills itself as a area control game set in Mayan mythology. So this game, honestly, when you looked at the Kickstarter, that's an Eric Lang game except set in Mayan mythology instead of Blood Rage or Rising Sun.
And Eric Lang is simultaneously tearing up his notes for his Maya-themed game.
So this has big, beautiful god miniatures like a dragon and a bunch of different figures from this mythology that are just beautiful.
A woman of the wind.
Is that what?
Well, no, she had like the bowl of the winds and she was sitting on the moon. No, she was sitting on the moon.
So
anyways.
This is one of Eric Lang's first big box games. This is one of John Cloudis' first big box games, and so I was extremely excited to get Mezzo to the table. Mezzo plays out over a series of 3 ages. It's very unlike normal games of this genre. It's very procedural. It's very tactical. So everyone has a unique asymmetric god, and that god comes with 5 cards, and every conflict in the game, you'll choose one of those cards, and you will only be able to do 2 out of the 3 actions on it. And so everyone has some special powers hidden on those cards that really, really make other players annoyed. Like, I can move the gods around, or I'm really good at removing other players' troops from the board.
Or I'm really good at reviving my troops from hell. That one really bugged you.
Ultimately, it gets rid of some of the phases of normal area control games where you're bringing troops to the board and slowly marching across the board. There is a troop phase, then a god phase where you add just troops to the board, you move your gods around the board, and then the conflicts start. And the conflict resolution in many ways feels a lot procedurally like Rising Sun, where one area happens, then the next area happens in a random order. But ultimately, you're fighting over 3 majorities. The majorities being having the most strength in an area, having the most shamans in an area, and having the most warriors in an area. And those all get you little victory points here and there, dinking and dunking for points. This is a very Euro-leaning dudes on a map game. What did you all think of Mezzo by John Cloudis?
I felt sort of conflicted about it. On one hand, it was clearly in my mind a good area control game. In the age of like a lot of Kickstarter games being area control and just area control games in general, I feel like a lot of times I'll start playing one or I'll play one and I'll be like, okay, that's definitely not a game that I ever will play again. I have no impetus to play again. It's definitely an average game at best. This felt to me like, okay, oh wow, this is a Kickstarter game that is a solid area control game for sure. To me, in my opinion, it's like at least above average. But then that also sort of brought to light, even though it is definitely above average, because area control games are among my favorite and because there are a lot of them out there, would it ever rise to a situation where I'd be eager to play again? It's definitely a game that I want to play again, but area control feels like a particularly, in my mind, maybe this is on my mind because we just played it, but a particularly like tough field to stand out in. But again, I just want to like clarify and say that it clearly felt like a strong, well-designed game, one that I enjoyed playing.
Yeah, I actually feel much stronger than that. I really, really liked it. I think I liked it the most out of everyone here. It was much more tactical than a lot of area control games that we've played. I tend to love tactical games. When we were learning this game, I was just like, I can't. This is horrible. It was so complicated at the beginning, or it seemed really complicated. There were a lot of names of actions that you had to remember. The barrier to entry felt very high, but there was a click at some point during the first age where I think we all kind of fell into the flow and we're like, oh, that's how that works out. Oh, that's how that resolves. Okay, we kind of got it. And I just thought it was so cool. One of my favorite things with tactical leaning games is when you've given up all hope because you have a specific plan and it's just you realize somebody does something that's going to completely block you. And then you look at your card and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see this. There's another action I can take here. I'm going to take advantage of this weird situation and make a new tactical move. And it ends up working out in this, it just feels so rewarding in a way that maybe less tactical games do. So I really liked that part of it.
So the thing she's talking about with the keywords is one of those situations where you have them all written down on your player aid, but it's appease, awaken, build, call, demolish, deploy, exile, recover, smite, and transform. And so all of those things where it could just say add one troop to the map. Instead, it's got a unique keyword that just somehow gets in the way. You understand why these publishers do it, but in other ways, it's quite annoying.
And you do get it, but it
you
just
do
took,
eventually get it.
It took a little longer than some other games.
And I'm sure on repeat plays that would just
Wouldn't
ease
be
your...
an issue
Yeah,
at all.
exactly. I think in general, I have the most issue with this being as tactical as it is. I know that I'm probably lean a lot less towards tactical games than the two of you, being Kellen and Christina. Mark, I'd be interested to hash this out with you more as someone who I feel also prefers strategic games over tactical ones.
Sure.
But my biggest issue was exactly kind of the thing you were describing, Christina. Is it kind of felt like I was constantly surprised, and not in a good way, by someone doing a thing that either I had forgotten that they could do, because everyone's deck of 5 cards is subtly different in ways between the gods. So Kellen plays a card in response to my card, and his action effectively negates mine. And this would happen back and forth between Kellen and I, in fact, in equal measure. And I found that quite frustrating because it kind of felt like, oh, this is my best laid plan, and then I'm going to be surprised and annoyed by a trap that feels like that's been sprung by the other player. And in a game that runs long, it took us 3 hours to play Mezzo, I found that frustrating.
I think you're wrong, and I think where you're wrong specifically is that the knowledge of what cards people have and what they generally do would only increase with plays.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the way in which the game is tactical, I think, is derived from two specific things. One is you draw 3 of those 5 cards, so you don't have access to all the action choices for each conflict, and then the order in which conflicts are resolved is random. And so the area that you may be planning on doing things first actually gets resolved 6th, and that completely changes the order in which troops are moving around the board. So it feels like Cosmic Encounter in that way, which is like you don't actually get to choose who you attack. It's just going to happen in this order.
Right.
So I feel like the specific criticism that it is too tactical, I think is real, but I think that the specific thing you cited would only get better with time, as you know that, like, well, you're the god that deals mostly with that, and you're the god that deals mostly with that. I feel like you would not have that level of gotcha moment.
I think that's true, but I think even to some extent, the fact that you're describing that you draw 3 of your cards to play exacerbates the problem, right? Because, for example, I might be like, I know what the best card in Kellen's hand of 5 cards to play is right now, but he might not even be able to play that on the first turn. So it's like you could even do that mental math and be stumped by the ability that Kellen only has access to a selection of those cards. And I know that's not a fair criticism because there's a good reason for the fact that you can only draw 3, because it would be way too weighed down in deciding among those 5 cards. But I think there are frequent design decisions in this that are aimed to reward responsive thinking rather than long-term strategic thinking.
Absolutely. And I think that that's interesting in how Euro-y it feels overall.
Right.
And sometimes at odds, and perhaps why Christina and I gravitate towards it. I think the biggest negative for me is definitely the length. It almost feels like it should be 2 turns long, and then maybe each turn should be just a smidgen longer. Our 4-player game took about 3 hours, and I think we could get that down a little bit, but all the reports I'm seeing online are that it's actually even longer than that. And I would not want a player to sit and read everyone's card every single turn, which would increase your strategic thinking, but would grind the game to a halt.
Yeah.
I will say that I left last night feeling a smidgen worried that I was ready to move on, that it wasn't going to live up to the Cthulhu Wars, the Inishes, the Blood Rages. And I've kind of been thinking about it today and more excited to play it again than when I left the table last night, which is a good sign and something that I'm excited about, even though it is too long for my taste right now.
I'm curious about how much we could cut off that playtime, though. I mean, part of me feels like you could cut a fairly substantial chunk of time out there, because I think more plays will foster more wanting to know what other people can do. But I think once you understand the language of what players can do and how the game works together, because what you can do is really just 3 things, and they're pretty simple things. It's not like do A, B, and C. It's like kill a player, bring a player back, or move your thing. It's pretty straightforward. So you could go around the table like, oh, Kellen, what can your guy do again? Oh, I can bring somebody back and put them wherever I want. It seems you could cut it down.
Yeah, there are those specific harsh powers. Neelan had a power that said, you have the most warriors for the purposes of resolving this conflict.
Yeah.
And so you almost have to define any age of the game by before or after Neelan having used that power.
Yeah, absolutely. I agreed. Yeah.
And I think now that we've played that, if we went in again, we would say, who has that god?
Right.
And there's almost 2 or 3 that should be highlighted as these are the big ones that you need to remember. And I think that would... I was frustrated last night, too, a couple of times vocally, because you and I did keep getting in those little, gotcha. And I was just like, well, okay, great. Moving on.
And by age 3, though, we were asking, wait, has Neelan
true.
used that card yet? Has Kellen already used? We were asking each other. So I think we were getting into that flow. I think if we played the next game, we would immediately understand all of those different powers much easier,
There's
much
also
better.
Other
nine
gods.
other
There's
gods.
other gods, yeah.
I'm not arguing with you on your opinion overall. It's just how it's tactical, or where it's a very weird design. It's very weird.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It doesn't feel like it quite fits into any specific, niche that this genre usually fills. But I am also interested in playing it again, certainly.
Okay, so let's get into our main topic.
Special topic.
Special topic. The first
Roll right into it.
the first
Coming out of Mezzo.
of the series.
Inspired by Mezzo.
Inspired by Mezzo, and here for your ears, our brand new series, What I Love and What I Hate.
What I love, what I hate. What I love, what I hate.
What I love, what I hate.
Thanks
What I love,
for
what I hate.
listening.
So let's start, as we always do in this series, with the Love Fest. Neelan, what do you love about area control games?
Yeah, as the preeminent lover of the 4 of us.
You are our main
I'll
lover.
thumbs up.
Lover Prime.
We're in love, though, the 2 of us over here.
I think if we asked people if they thought we were in love, I don't know. Who could say what their answer would be?
What do you? We want to poll the Discord on this?
So the thing I want to talk about may seem like tangential to area control initially, but I think that this type of game tends to lead towards something I really like in the hobby, which is asymmetric factions. I think the reason for that is that you want to create vacuums around the table. You want to create tensions. So as soon as one player is able to do something stronger than another player at the table, it creates this dynamic of, well, Neelan's the player that is going to be doing this strong attack, while Kellen's going to be the person that's going to be opening up all these gates or something. It creates this like focal points for discussion. It creates like tensions and things like, well, we have to stop Neelan from being able to build a big army. We need to stop Kellen from being able to amass this array of cards. And I think the game for me that still stands out the most in this regard is Rising Sun. So one of the factions, for example, is built around being able to get cards extremely easily. And if you allow them to get away with that, that runs the game away for them. One faction is able to move around the map very easily. So if your focal point when playing against that faction is limiting their ability to benefit from their specific power. It bakes in smart ways to think about how you need to be countering people from the beginning of the game. Because if you're not playing to your faction specific power, you're just not doing as well as you could be doing. I know that there's something that generally people will criticize about asymmetry, is that you are forced down a specific path. But I think the counterpoint of negotiation, which is built into this type of game, is what balances that out. It's that you're only allowed to sort of maneuver down a path as far as other players are willing to let you. It's a dynamic that I think really works for me in this style of game.
I think what's interesting is that, in comparison to engine builders or card tableau builders, in an area control game with a physical representation of a map or a map-like space, you're watching the guy who has double movement and you're just mad. You're sitting there going, well, wait a minute, Neelan's moving all around the board and it's taking me so long to do this, or, oh my God, look at Mark's unit.
Just something that we say very often.
That's true.
No, but seriously, you look at their monster and you're like, it's got 17 attack. Like, how is that possible? And that creates the natural tension points, like you said. And so a area control game, I think, is better able to represent that asymmetry in a way that makes sense, where, you might have a tableau that leans more science-y than me. And if I knew what the was going on in your tableau, that might matter to me.
Right.
But area control...
There's better manifestation sort of it.
Correct.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, in a very physical way.
Right.
I think you also always feel, as in life, that somebody else's power is stronger than yours.
Yeah.
Even though that might not be true at all, you're just like, they can fly over the entire map. Why can't I do that?
Totally.
Like, that's not as good as my power.
Scythe is another good example of this for me, where like the red faction, for example, people tend to be very frustrated at the fact that someone could just move to the factory instantly, and everyone's like, why can't I do that?
Right.
But then you're not looking at the fact that, the white player is sweeping up all these encounter tokens, and that feels unfair. And it's those little moments of everyone just feeling like someone else is having an unfair game by virtue of their power, that, it creates good heated moments.
Yeah, it also forces you to pay really close attention to what everyone else is doing. And I think that's a really unique thing to this type of game, I think, where you're having to not only plan out your every move and your strategy, but also think about how everybody else can impact that and try as best as you can to prevent them from destroying your plan.
Right.
Once again, as was the case with the crew, I'm going to take your negative, tense feelings and convert them to a positive, because the thing I like about asymmetric power so much is, like, I feel like I am the blank guy. It's like even part of the escapism of the game. Like, I'm the flying guy. Like,
Something you've always wanted to be.
that is true.
Like, you're always the one with the coolest power.
Well, there's obviously the part where, like, I can't believe Kellen can do this and I can't believe Christina can do that. There's like that negative thing you have to worry about. But there's also the, like, yeah, they can do that, but I'm this guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the big army guy, the big unit guy, as Kellen often calls me. So yeah, that's just one thing I love about these asymmetric.
This is one thing that I really admire about Mark as a person.
What?
Well, no, because I've told you this before. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I worry about what people think. I think that's kind of a lot of people do, right? And it just seems like, in the same way, like you just said, like, yeah, they have cool powers. I have cool powers too.
Yeah.
You're one of the only people I know who is like truly
Yeah.
self-assured in the sense that you're just like, no, I have cool power. Right. I'm like, no, I don't care if I lose this co-op game for you guys. I'm doing my best.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
It's like the way you play games is very representative of you as a person. Anyways, that's just a sidebar.
So for me, playing board games is all about social interaction. I am a social gamer. And so area control games best represent, this is my favorite mechanism, best represent conflict forward. Many modern board games are designed in a way to minimize conflict, to take something like worker placement and abstract away having multiple players on the same space. So for me, area control, what I love about it is that it puts the conflict at the forefront of what's happening, and that is the game in all situations.
Just to clarify, this is what you love. We moved from Neelan to you.
Yeah, I kept the show running.
Okay, just clarify.
I'm a taskmaster.
I don't know. There was no sense of finality.
There was. It was over. It had run its course.
All right.
And we moved on. Here we are. Conflict forward. One of the great examples for me in just a very reduced design that the conflict is the game is Inis. So Inis has a very small draft that takes place, but ultimately where you go, what cards you play, and where you put your troops is the game. So most of the game is spent, I move one troop into Neelan's land, and then Neelan screams, "What?" And then I scream, "You're right, I'm here." And then we argue about it for a half an hour. That's what happens.
Yeah, I know.
That's how our games of Inis go.
No, I know. I think if anything, this is like the essence of what area control games are. Like if you boil down area control games to one thing that sets them apart, it's the conflict forward aspect of them. You know, hand management games, tableau builders, all these other games, you can have some level of multiplayer solitaire, but area control games, for the most part, force some level of conflict, which is, I think, their hallmark.
I think this is also the biggest point of friction for a lot of people, but also the main reason that we love them in particular.
Yeah, and I think many people bounce off of area control games when they play them with the wrong group of players, either with friends, whether friends who take things too seriously, or also with groups of randos at board game night, because, you know, there are moments even in our game of Mezzo last night where we're justifying to each other why we're smiting. You know, I'm smiting yellow at Neelan. It had to happen this way because, you know, Mark's in second place, and if Mark is in second place and Christina's in third place, therefore I must smite you, who's already in last place.
We did do a lot of apologizing. There was one point where Mark and I had an agreement that we were able to smite one each, but anything after that was a breach of the agreement.
The smite agreement.
Yeah, but that definitely kept. I was like, Neelan, I'm so sorry. I have to do this. And then I had this. Kellen was like, you remember he did that to you last stage? And I was like, oh yeah. And then I was so happy. There's just like this sense of revenge that feels so real. Otherwise, you just feel bad. Okay, so transitioning here to mine. So official transition. That's what Kellen loves. Here's what I love. What are you doing? What's wrong?
I just wanted to hold hands.
Oh, really?
No, I was passing the baton to you, but you didn't. Yeah, there you go. Oh.
We're in love. For the record. Okay. So I'll start again, as in life. The things you love often are also the things you hate. So this is a tough one. I think for me, what I love so much about area control games is how personal they feel, in the sense that you are building an army of people, and it's your army, and you have unique abilities that nobody else has that just feel like yours. Like if you are, what's the green guy called in Cthulhu Wars?
Cthulhu.
That is great. That is staying in for sure.
Oh no. Oh yeah. Cthulhu. Mr. Cthulhu. I'm sorry, Mr. Cthulhu. Please forgive me, Mr. Cthulhu.
He's not one for apologies from what I've read, but
all right. Well, if you are Mr. Cthulhu, in Cthulhu Wars, you are so proud of the fact that you can submerge underwater and then pop up and surprise people. You're so proud of your powers. You're proud of your troops. And I don't know why I get this way, but I just like, there's this sense of pride.
Yeah.
You're building this thing up so that when somebody comes and takes it down, it just hurts so much.
Yeah.
And I think that tension comes from that place of it being so personal. And I just love that.
It's like an ownership thing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think in a Euro game, you're not that upset when you're building one of 20 gets burned down or whatever.
Right.
But if it's a troop, it's one of yours. You made it. You put it there. It's there for a reason. And then someone takes it from you. It does have this very distinct, like, this was mine and now you've hurt me personally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I can't believe I forgot Mr. Cthulhu.
Official transition?
Official transition, or Kellen, do you want to weigh in? You look very pensive.
Yeah, I think in area control games, you get the most tense out of any game that you play, and it slowly just twists until the end of the game. And I think you do very well in them as well.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
And that sense of ownership over, in Cthulhu Wars, it's gates. And trying to score points, and like someone takes one away from you and then you snap at them, and it's very interesting how the physicality of it leads to some of that sense of ownership as you take over the map and like, no, this is my territory and my troops that have these special powers.
I mean, I know this isn't what you meant when you said physicality, because you mean actually physically controlling areas, but there's no other genre of games that physically affects me the way area. Like I was standing.
And rocking back and forth.
I was standing and pacing for almost the entire game last night of Mezzo. I just get so invested. I at one point took my jacket off and threw it on the ground because I was so angry at what Neelan did.
Official transition.
Baton, transition, hand. No, don't you dare hold hand.
It was a clear handing of the baton.
So my favorite aspect of area control games is the grandness that it sort of lends to the game. And we've sort of all touched on this in, I think, speaking about our favorite particular part. But I think area control games allow for a sweep that other games can't really match. Games that spring to mind are Dominant Species. It's a game that, despite its length, you're sort of in charge of a class of family. You're either the reptiles or you're the mammals, and it's like you've got to shepherd them into the current age. You've got to like shield them from this ice age. You're competing for food. You're competing for like survival, and it's got this like epicness to it. Tigris and Euphrates, this is an abstract game in a lot of ways, but it does feel like kingdom versus kingdom and a lot of like battling over territory. And Twilight Struggle is another game. You're fighting the Cold War. You're going from the early part of the Cold War to the late stage of the Cold War. You've got the space race to contend with, and they all just feel like there's a lot of like historically themed games. And again, I'm a sucker for historically themed games. The coin games could be considered area control games in a lot of ways. And I just love that. I feel like when we played PAX Premier 2nd Edition, I'm a warlord in Afghanistan trying to figure out how I'm going to work with the British and work with the Russians. And there's all these characters from history. There's just a grandness and like an elevation of
like larger than life.
Yeah, exactly. That I just love from games like that.
Just like our favorite genre of books.
That's right.
It's the same.
Magical realism. Yeah, right. Yes, there's an elevation of like, exactly. Absolutely.
I think this like throws back to what will probably be, at least of our generation's, everyone's first area control game, like Risk. Like I remember playing Risk for the first time and just feeling like how epic it was to see your colors spread across the map, right? Yeah. I think that's a big part of it for me as well.
All right, official transition.
To hate.
What are some aspects of area control games that you don't like as much? I'll start by talking about the negative side of a game that Kellen spoke about in his Love Fest, Inis. The thing that's turned me off about Inis, and could be corrected in the expansion, and seems to be corrected to be fair, is the king-making aspect of it. A lot of area control games sometimes boil down to you're out of it, and because there's so many resources that are being expended into sort of like keeping the balance or going ahead, that a person who is not really in the running to win finds himself in a place where they are sometimes forced to weaken one or the other parties in the game, and it sort of becomes a situation where they're not really playing to win, but they're affecting who wins the game, and it just feels like a suboptimal experience. We had a famous argument about this in our 5th episode, so go ahead and go back to the
That's before
archives.
You were an old man.
I've always been an old soul.
That's true.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so for me, king making is one thing about area control games that I don't necessarily love so much.
So for me, the thing that's hard to articulate about what can be bad in area control games is this sense of you've made this master plan, and then you go to execute it, and one little knife in the back can just undo you. So there are those friction points that most of them are fine, but then randomly one will hit you in a game, and it'll just ruin the game, or it'll ruin your plan. Like right before the last turn, there was a turn in Mezzo last night where I wasn't going to win the game, but I was like a 10 to 15 point differential where Neelan got me, and I didn't even think it was in his best interest to get me, and it lost me 15 points, and I was going, oh no, like Neelan, you don't want to do this, and it hurt more than a normal turn because I didn't anticipate it, perhaps. We recently played Online Diplomacy, with some members of the Board Game Barrage Discord, which you can join at boardgamebarrage.com/discord if you want to hang out and chat board games with us. And what struck me about Diplomacy is that it's essentially all of those, every move is that same knife tension point. Like it's either this or it's that. They're very binary, fighty, knife in your back or knife in my back moments. And I think Area Control lends itself to getting frustrated by those things that just swing the wrong way. And it's either you get it or you don't. And that leads to more ups and downs that you have to be okay with, and you have to know how to manage with the people that you're playing with.
Yeah, and that can be very hard in a game that lasts 3 hours. It can also be very, very frustrating if there's one player who picks you and then they attack you over and over and over in the first round.
Why are you looking at Kellen when you say that?
Yeah, this wasn't Kellen actually.
No, but I mean, I think
but it just like ruins you for the whole game. I had a game of Cthulhu Wars like that where there was nothing I can do to come back. So I spent 2 hours of the game. I still had fun, but you have to enter into the game knowing that that might happen, and you have to be able to create a fun experience outside of winning, basically, because I feel like the chance for that to happen, for you to just be out of it, is a little heightened in area control games.
Yeah, I think this ties into exactly what my low point would be, which is that early board state is such a big factor in the latter half of the game. Like in Diplomacy is a great example, because in the online game that I played, I was literally out on the first turn by the indications of all the returning veteran Diplomacy players.
But at least with the Diplomacy, it's player elimination, so you could go read a book or
well,
go
yeah,
home.
I could have just resigned. But yeah, exactly. In a 3-hour game, you might just be struggling to claw your way back from a very unwinnable board state.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to do it for what we love
What?
and what we hate
That's it?
about area control games. The first in the series of what I love and what I hate.
We're done talking about what we
We're
hate?
done. We're out of here.
go home.
Kellen?
Snappy. We're snappy.
Pack it up.
Kellen,
Snappy.
We go home together.
you're done, Kellen? Talking about what you hate?
Well, what does that mean? I didn't. She's like, I'm used to you talking a lot more
Well,
about
yeah.
the things you hate.
I'm actually surprised. Okay, I guess we could be done.
Now that we've been granted permission, we are going to end the show. Thank you all for listening. You can find us on all types of social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on all that kind of stuff. You can join the discussion in a couple of ways. Join the Discord. Talk to us right now. Pick up your phone. Go to boardgamebarrage.com/Discord and talk to Kellen.
Kellen's literally on Discord right
now, yeah.
Actually, most of the record, he's been on Discord.
I'm going to say that if you join Discord right now,
Well,
wherever you are,
there's a high chance.
High chance that within
High
10 minutes, somebody, probably Kellen, is going to welcome you on the introductions channel, which he's very good at.
95% chance.
Yeah. So join Discord and talk to Kellen. For more long-form discussion, you can join us at the Guild, boardgamebarrage.com/guild. For more Neil and Esque.
yeah, for coherent, for more coherent discussion, just tag Mark or Dylan.
Yeah, there you go. And if you want to talk to Christina, you can text her at
It's actually...
okay, or that number. And that's going to do it for the show. Thank you, as always, to Heart Society Music for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid? And thanks to Blue Tank for joining us yet again.
Thank you.
That's a perfect way to end the show. See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Wait,
Stay cool.
we didn't tell them about the in mezzo. You know how we did a dance for every different battle? The
What?
battle dances? We didn't tell them about the battle dances.
What are the battle
What are the
dances?
ba-
Oh, where you were like
Boba-
Cabo.
Boba, boba. That was the best part of the game. We forgot to mention.
What were the other ones?
Palenque.
I don't remember the Palenque dance.
It was like a palenque.
I don't remember that at all.
It was kind of, yeah.
I think this is being made up right now.
No,
What was
you
Chickenista?
don't. Chickenista?
Yeah.
Well, that's not what it's called, but we can make one up for Chickenista. Chickenista.
Why do we just do songs now? I don't.
I don't know. That's a thing. It's a new thing.
No, okay. All right. Goodbye. But it's not in this game. It was okay. I got flustered because
Sure.
Kellen looked annoyed.
What?
Okay, so how come you like Kanabi? This is not for this episode, but how come you like Kanabi but not other co-op games?
I'm a man of many mysteries.
All right.
I looked deep into Mark's eyes as I said that, and not yours, which is.
Yeah, well, Mark is the mystery man, so that feels
Wait,
right.
Mark is the mystery man?
Yes, of course Mark is the mystery man. What
How
are you
many
talking
times have they
about?
been to my place?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've never invited us.
There you go. I have invited
He
you.
has. He
You
has.
invited us one time.
Okay, and you
to
said
your
no.
gym. I didn't
So your
want to go to
acceptance
the
rate
gym.
is 0.0%.
I don't like going to the gym.
Mathematically,
I
you
don't
have
work out.
accepted none of my offers. Anyway, so that's what this
I'm
when
going
you
to
say-
start having lunch at Mark's house every
Oh
day.
yeah, that's right.
What?
Yeah, you literally can.
Yep.
Okay, so this is when you say
Mark was the best player I've ever seen
Mark,
at this game.
We're gonna cut that and put it at the end of the episode as well.
Yeah, I was
that's
thinking.
gonna be the newest track.
So that's Stay Cool.
And Linky.
All right.
You thought that was cute?
Well,
Yeah, that is cute.
Yeah, it's fine. It works.
All right.
You're so cute, Christina.
Okay.
Aw.
That's not going to make up for you're only fun to be around for in small doses because you're annoying the rest of the time.
All right.
Rude.
Let's move on.
So
Everybody knows Kellen is a rude Gus, right?
Rude dude.
So-
I don't think
Rude dude
on a.
on a map.
Cool, but
Rude dude on a map.
Rude dude on a map. That's Kellen.
Rude
Allen.
meeple on a map. So what we hate about area control games. Neelan, hate it up.
I think I thought this far ahead.
Neil, and the topic for tonight is two things.
Yeah, exactly.
Number one, what I love about area control
I
games.
wanted
Number
to-
two, what I hate. And then your answer is, I don't think I thought that far ahead.
Was there enough funny stuff in that episode?